Welcome to another episode of Activist. I'm Gareth.
And I'm Jackie. Today we talk with a lovely ray of sunshine in the form of Edith Barabash from Farmhouse Garden Animal Home.
Have you ever wondered about turning a farm into a sanctuary? Well, Edith's your girl. She helped Mike Lanigan, a former cattle rancher, turn his land into a sanctuary. So join us in today's episode as we learn about that conversion and also some of the innovative fundraising that they've been doing to keep it afloat. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like the video, leave a like. If you learned something, drop a comment below. We really hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did. Thank you so much for joining us today, Edith. For our viewers watching all around the world, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So my name is Edith Barabash. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Farmhouse Garden Animal Home. We are an animal rescue in Uxbridge, Ontario in Canada. And about 4 years ago, we converted the sanctuary from a fully working cattle ranch. So it's been a long transition, difficult at times, but here we are now taking care of 29 cows. We have a bunch of hens, a rooster, a donkey, a horse. It's really a full house, and I love what we do at the sanctuary. It's really great and so fulfilling.
Oh, it's fantastic. And, we love following you and we'll certainly talk about that for our viewers, where they can all follow what you're doing as well. And, one of the most rewarding things for any vegan who I'm sure is watching is knowing that they've inspired somebody else to stop contributing to animal suffering. But in your case, however, you said, you're the co-founder, but you actually managed to inspire a third generation cattle rancher to stop slaughtering animals and transform that farm into a vegan animal sanctuary. So I guess we should probably start this story from when you and Mike first met. You were a teenager helping out at the local market. So could you tell us about those days and how it all began?
Yeah. I'm still at the farmer's market now, so I still remember very well how it was when we just started. I think I was like 15 years old or so, might have been a little younger, and I started working at a local farmer's market near my house for Mike. And Mike at the time, well, like now, he was growing a bunch of organic vegetables. Basically anything that grows in Ontario will grow on his farm. And he was also raising chickens, pigs, and cows for meat to sell at the market. And I was there working, helping him sell these things at the time. And yeah, it wasn't until 4 years ago, so definitely like a good few years into me working at the farmer's market with him, that he decided to take on this transition. So things are really different now, but also much of it is the same at the farmer's market. We're still there selling organic fruits and vegetables every single week. So yeah, not much has changed in that aspect, except now the customers who want meat cannot get it from Mike.
Oh, well, that's it's so wonderful how he's made that transition. And I know in previous interviews you've spoken about that sort of defining moment for you, which really sort of cemented it all with, making that choice to, rather than being a plant-based for health reason, to go more towards veganism, and really adopting those ethical approaches. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the time that you accompanied Mike to take some of those animals to slaughter for the last sort of time?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, at the time, I did consider myself vegan/plant-based. I was kind of like dabbling in it for health reasons primarily, and I hadn't really connected with the ethical aspect of veganism at that point yet. But I was starting to connect a lot more with the animals at the sanctuary, or at the farm at the time, I guess, because I was in charge of feeding them, making sure that they were comfortable before, we had our morning and evening chores that we did with the animals. So I did start to connect with them, and I'd always like sneak off into the field and feed them like excess cabbage leaves and stuff whenever people weren't looking. So I had these little moments where I was connecting with them and realizing that the animals really are so special. And then, one day Mike did ask me to accompany him to the slaughterhouse. And it wasn't to like watch the animal being slaughtered. It was just to help him load the animal onto the trailer and bring him there and unload him. And I didn't anticipate it being as difficult as it was for me. But like from the get-go, like first thing in the morning, like we knew, well, I could tell right away that this cow did not want to go on to, well, I guess he was a bull, didn't want to go on to the truck. And then when we got there, we had a really hard time getting him off of it. And we had to kind of, I won't go into the details, but it was emotionally difficult getting him into his stall at the slaughterhouse. And it's important to keep in mind that the slaughterhouse is the highest standard of like humane slaughter, right? So I didn't think it would be that difficult for me, but we got there and we finally, like, this cow was in his stall. He calmed down a little bit, and then I had a chance to really take in my surroundings, and I realized how heavy this place was. I kind of took a little walk around, and there was this huge room just filled with animals. They looked like babies to me. These just a bunch of like sheep and goats and alpacas, and they were all just kind of silently standing there. It was a really shocking moment for me, and one that I think was a defining moment in my journey towards veganism.
I can imagine that's so powerful, and thank you for sharing that. And as someone who spent a lot of time around cattle myself, I can totally picture and understand what you meant about the fear and how, that animal would not have wanted to go on the truck, because cows are such social creatures, aren't they? They don't like being on their own. They don't like being separated from their friends, from their pack. So that's really poignant and powerful. Thank you. Something, I know you said you didn't witness the actual slaughter, but just being there is heavy enough, and you get that feeling, that whole sort of eerie sense that, the animals know that something isn't right. So having been that close to it all, when, we all hear the expressions of things like grass-fed is better, free range, I only buy this, and humane slaughter. And as you say, this particular slaughterhouse was about the most humane that you could get in what they were doing. So when people use the expression humane slaughter now, what does that invoke within you?
Well, the first thing I think about is all of the beautiful animals at the sanctuary who are enjoying their lives, on pasture and enjoying like all of the beautiful things that a cow would enjoy. And the thought of cutting that short for something as simple as palate pleasure, as wanting a meal, is to me unfathomable. But even back then when Mike was raising animals for slaughter, and again, everything was organic, the highest standard of humane meat, the animals were essentially babies when they were sent off. Like this bull that we had loaded onto the trailer was probably no more than 2 or 3 years old. And when you look at a lifespan of a cow, we have a cow now named Martha who's 18 years old, and hopefully will be with us for at least a few more years. You think, like, what is 2-3 years old? It's this tiny fraction of a life that could be spent enjoying, right? And like, who are we to decide when they die? It's something that I thought a lot about after that visit to the slaughterhouse. And there's a lot of humane washing that goes on, I like to call it, when it comes to selling meat, and people unfortunately often fall for it without realizing what it really entails. Like, as a slaughterhouse is a slaughterhouse, no matter how humane they call it. An animal comes in whole and comes out chopped into pieces. It's nothing great can really go on in there.
Yeah, definitely. When you put it like that, I think one thing, one of our friends drew a comparison recently that really kind of summed it up quite well. I think, we like to tell ourselves that these animals had you know, it was a shame, yeah, but they had a long and happy life. They were free roaming pasture and all that kind of thing. And one of our friends compared it to, it's like hitting someone with a car that's running, that's going across a pedestrian crossing. You might hit.
They look happy enough, they're just
Yeah.
going about their day, they're quite happy, but and it's
It's a shame. They had a happy life though. That was just unfortunate. It's like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And if anything, it almost seems like the ultimate betrayal, right? Like this animal was so well cared for and trusts you and loves you and looks to you to take care of them. So it seems, I mean, I wouldn't say it's better or worse, but it seems equally sadistic almost, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. So one thing that's come up quite a few times during the filming of this series is leading by example. And on the farm, Mike's gone through a bit of an individual transformation as well. But just having you there, at the start, your plant-based journey, and then progressing towards a more vegan journey. How do you feel that sort of helped in getting Mike, to sow those seeds from turning an organic beef farm into sort of a vegan animal sanctuary?
Yeah, there were a lot of conversations, a lot of like sharing thoughts, because like we were both kind of going on this journey together, right? Like, yeah, by the time he had made his transition, I had already been vegan for quite a while, but I was always kind of formulating my ideas on the matter and talking to him about it. And like I would see him every week at the farmer's market. And also I did a few internships at his farm, so I would live at the farm for a while. And yeah, we were always talking about, I remember like we had this conversation once that I think really hit home for him about, like there was a dog on at the farm at the time named Buddy, and we were kind of thinking about how, the cows on his farm are just as much, just like are equally loved as this dog Buddy, but like one of them, like the cows meet this terrible end and Buddy's going to continue to be loved and cherished. So I think it really hit home for him when we had that conversation of like, well, what's the difference? Like really, when you look at it, what's the difference between the dog and the cow? They're both on the farm, they're both loved, but the ending is so different. So many years of these conversations led up to our transition to sanctuary. It wasn't really an overnight thing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant, because I know, especially in my life, some of your hardest critics, by just having those conversations and slowly building up to it, can really end up changing their mind. Like my mum was one who, was always, she used to poke a little bit of fun, when we first went vegan, and then over time, just through having those conversations and sharing what was the thought process for ourselves, all of a sudden it clicks with her, and then she goes with it, and it's absolutely wonderful to be able to have those conversations.
Definitely. Yeah, you're right. I forget that, she's such a staunch advocate for animals now. And it's amazing to think that she was once that person that commented bacon and, lamb chops and all that. So just proof that like Mike as well, anybody can change. How did that make you feel, having spent that time with Mike and had these conversations, when you first heard of his plans, and to have been given such an instrumental role in being part of that change? It must have been so exciting. It must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, well, I did not see it coming at all. Like it was a complete, when we had these conversations, it didn't even cross my mind that a third generation rancher would ever think about changing his entire business model in this way. So like that wasn't at all ever my intention to like convert him or anything like that. It was totally just sharing our thoughts with each other and talking. So when I did get it was actually like I was out of the country at the time, and I just got like a text message from him, being like, oh, like I have this like idea to discuss with you. Like I'm thinking about making some changes. And I was like, okay, like I don't know what you're talking about, but all right. And then I got back and he sat me down and we had this discussion. I was floored. Like it was hugely exciting. Like I was like my mind was just going a mile a minute, like thinking of the ways that we could do this and how to fundraise and everything. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into at the time. It was like pure excitement. And the second he said it, I was like, all right, I got this. We're going. Like overnight, I was like, that's it. No more animals. We're going to slaughter. But yeah, it was, yeah, I did not know what I was getting myself into, I guess is the point of that. But it was hugely exciting for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I guess when you first got that text message, was it a case of, he wants to maybe grow beets this year?
Like it's a little dramatic, but okay.
So whenever people hear about your story, I know it always comes up a lot, it's like, how does someone go about, transitioning a farm from, producing, raising livestock, to then just focusing purely on plants, and knowing the farming industry a bit more from the inside, wondering, was there a process of sort of destocking before going towards the sanctuary that Mike did, or was it just a case of, today there's no more slaughter going to happen, or was it, because we know there is a huge expense when it comes to, running sanctuaries and trying to keep, because these animals are normally only alive for maybe 2-3 years, and then when we keep them alive for 20, there's a huge amount of cost. So was there any sort of process in that to getting ready towards being a sanctuary?
No, essentially. Well, we always kind of laugh that most other sanctuaries start off with like this big reserve fund, and then slowly, like, they're very calculated about how many animals they take in. And we started off with like over 20 cows, which is hugely expensive, and zero money. So it was completely backwards from what people know. Like, it was very, very unconventional. And I couldn't think of any other sanctuary that had really started out quite with nothing in the way that we have. So actually, when we had just, so essentially we started things off with me filming a video of Mike talking about his ideas and what he wants to do. And at that point, it was all very tentative. It was like, well, if we do this, would you support it? Like, should we do it this way or that way? And the video is still up online, and it's got quite a few views now. It's really cool to look back at it. And at that point, like, we had no idea what we were doing. We're like, all right, well, I don't really know what a sanctuary entails, but like, we could do it this way. And one of the bulls at the time was actually booked in to go to the slaughterhouse. And I knew this, like, he was already booked to go since before Mike had talked to me. And I think it was going to be only a couple of days away. And so I had this like huge scramble to do this initial fundraiser. I was very, very determined to not let that happen. And Mike thought that it was going to happen. He thought it was going to be like a slow transition to the sanctuary. But I was like, no, like the second he told me he doesn't want to do it, like, that's it, we're done. So we had this initial big fundraiser, and we were very lucky because it was huge. It was so amazing. The money kind of came pouring in overnight. It wasn't like huge amounts to sustain us for years, but it was definitely like more than enough to give us a bit of a start. So having seen that, I think really reassured Mike, and helped him realize that there is a community that will back us and we can continue this. So that's kind of how we started off. It was really this video that kickstarted things. At that point, we didn't have a website, we didn't have social media, we had nothing, just this video out there, and people just kept asking us, like, how do we support you? How do we help you start this? So we were very lucky in that sense.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I'm so glad you're able to save the bull there, because I suppose when I often think of the farms, I'm used to the New Zealand ones where they have, 200 cattle can be small. Out here, they might have thousands. So, it's good to have that smaller number and then to be able to care for them and
keep them all. It's definitely, it's one thing people don't consider as well. Over here we get people saying, oh, there are 50 4-day-old calves or 200 4-day-old calves that are going to go to slaughter, and the sanctuaries have got to save them, but it's not you know, if you want to keep an animal for life, that is going to cost a hell of a lot. You know, you're not looking, those 4-day-old calves are not going to stay 4-day-old size. They are going to grow, you know, to a lot, and they're going to need feeding forever. So, you know, it's fantastic that you had so much support from the start. You know, we've spoken that you also are organic vegetable growers, and much of the farming that we see these days is, you know, monoculture, where you sort of grow one particular crop and farm that intensively. But from what we understand, you guys grow a little bit of everything. So, you know, is that part of your success on running the farm as it is today, that, you know, you're growing those vegetables on a larger scale and doing the markets and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so sustainability and environmentalism is hugely important to Mike. He's always been, he's always grown organically, even before it was like a thing, when nobody really understood what it was or why he's even doing it. He was always pulled towards that. So when it was really interesting when I was doing my farming internships there, I learned so much about what sustainable agriculture really is and how important it is to the farm and the land and the wildlife and everything. And Mike's farm is one of the only ones around that is quite like that. But it's cool. We have, we're on like a rotation system. So every, I can't remember exactly how many years, but it's like every few years or every year things shift, right? So if you have like beans in one spot one year, they won't be in the same spot the next year. So the soil, the things that get leached from the soil will get regenerated in the next year. So it's a really cool system. He has it all figured out and calculated and knows far more than I ever will about agriculture. But it's really inspiring to see someone who's so passionate about sustainability and really lives it. And it's growing the way he does is not the profitable thing to do at all, by no means. But he continues to do it, and he's not going to give up his morals for anything. So yeah, it's very inspiring.
Well, that's wonderful. And
sounds like an amazing guy. Yeah.
yeah, because regenerative agriculture, you know, and regenerative farmers are starting to become, it's sort of one of the buzz things that's starting to come out now in the agriculture sort of industry. And that's, you know, as you say, you know, getting back, regenerating the soil, bringing it back. But a lot of farmers, especially out here in New Zealand, who are now, the few who are starting to give up the stock, you know, are starting to see, you know, they're starting to see worms in the soil again. They're starting to see the black carbon rich soil at the top there. And it's so wonderful that, you know, we can really restore these lands by, you know, keeping things moving. And did Mike find any benefits to, you know, when he stopped sending the animals to slaughter and just keeping them on the farm? Did he see any benefits to sort of the soil and the production quality, you know, just having them mooching around?
Well, the beauty of having the sanctuary the way that it is that we still get the benefits to the land without harming the animals. So we still use the manure to fertilize the garden, because what else are you going to do with the ridiculous amounts of manure that, like, I can't even explain to you how much manure we have to deal with. It's, but yeah, but it's really good for the garden, and having a grazing herbivore on the land is hugely beneficial to the farm. Obviously not, I mean, we know that there's a lot of damage that having too many cows can do, there's a lot of damage that too many cows can do to farmland, but having it done on kind of like a crop rotation system the way that he does, and making sure that the land has some time to regenerate before the cows get on the land again, is actually hugely beneficial. So not much has changed in that respect. The land was really healthy before, and it still is healthy now, but the beauty of it is that we don't have to slaughter the animals to do that. So I think it's a really cool model.
Definitely. And yeah, like you say, that whole herbivore manure thing, you know, that it just takes it to that next level as well, doesn't it? So.
Oh God, the amount of manure we deal with.
In a previous life, I have to admit, I myself worked on dairy and beef farms here in New Zealand for 18 years. So I can really understand some of the struggles that Mike went through when it came to doing that whole about turn in the industry that we were so indoctrinated in. Can you tell us about some of the backlash that he encountered from others around him for daring to, you know, now decide he was going to save lives instead and not kill animals for food?
Yeah, so where the sanctuary is really deep in a farming community. So there isn't much like vegan or animal rights influence in that area at all. And a lot of farmers around did initially see it as kind of an attack on them, even though that wasn't at all what Mike meant to do. Mike is the kind of person who wants to get along with everybody. He would never want to alienate, especially your neighbors, right? We have some neighbors who've helped us out, like other beef farmers who have donated hay to us, who have stopped to help us with other things as well. It was really important to him to not alienate the people around him and to retain that community of people who he had grown up around. But that being said, a lot of them did take it the wrong way. So that was just, I think, something that he realized was going to be part of the transition. Not everybody would be on board with it. But the vast majority of people, once, after talking to him and hearing his point of view, realized that, yeah, this was his decision. It doesn't mean that he's anti-farmer, which is something that some people had said at first. I like to think that things have settled down now, and we have a nice community around us that is really supportive of what we do. There was initial backlash. Also from his family, it wasn't easy because it was a huge transition for everybody, right? His sons worked at the farm at that time. So doing this kind of, at the time, it seemed like such a sudden shift, had a lot of repercussions on, his community and family and everything, but it took time, right? And we're happy where we are now.
Oh, well, that's wonderful to hear, and it's it's got to be expected when you go against the grain that there's going to be some sort of resistance, and so good on you guys for like pushing through that and carrying on. And the core series of this, the core focus of this series is to help vegans advocate better, and to also be more active in the movement, and also understand the different methods of how we can advocate. So, having seen it firsthand, what would be your top tips when advocating when it comes to dealing with farms and farmers? How can we approach them better?
I think the reason I was successful is because I wasn't really trying to do it. It's hard. It's hard because when you're a farmer and you're so entrenched in that lifestyle, it's everything to you, right? It's the way you were born and raised. It's your whole belief system. So it's really hard when it comes from a place of like, if you're trying to convince them of something. I don't know if that would be successful in many cases, just because the walls are going to go up so quickly because it's your whole lifestyle. I think understanding where the other person is coming from, the point that they're at is not the same point that you're at, and finding that compassion and finding that mutual understanding and taking it from there is really important. Mike always says that it's the fact that I was like a quiet voice and I wasn't trying to convince him or like berate him for what he's doing, just like a quiet voice explaining my thoughts. That's what he said kind of got to him. That being said, I don't think there's one good way to do activism. I think different things work for different people. And I would never think that like my way is superior, because I mean, it happened. I was very lucky that it worked for Mike, but I don't know about other farmers.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's some brilliant advice, about trying to understand the mindset, because, well, as we know in Jackie's case, especially, there's so much pressure that farmers are under already. There's the living on the farm, you're dealing with problems every day from so many different angles. So it's not a case of, making an excuse for it, but it's a case of if you can understand that mindset first, we already have a foot in, and then we can work around it. And it also leads back to a lot of our outreach activists that we've had on the series speak about the Socratic method, and that's understanding, how people are already thinking, and then using that to then try and align their actions with their ethics, and I think in a lot of cases with farmers as well, there is that issue of, you know, that they have some of the ethics there. It's just that the actions have been taught to be so different, you know, because of those years of entrenchment in it.
Absolutely. And it's like in Mike's case as well, you know, and often over here, you're going against your family and generations of, you know, it's like, in their eyes, it's like you're going against everything that, you know, your forefathers worked for, which is, it's quite confronting. And I still have a lot of friends that are in the farming industry. You know, I guess I don't have a lot to do with them anymore, but it's like, okay, you're still the same people, you know, that you were before I went vegan. And there was once upon a time that I was at that point just like you. So it doesn't mean all of a sudden that, you know, I look at you as a different person and that I don't like you anymore. I'm not a fan of what you're doing and I wish you had a different job, but, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to like you. So, you know, I mean, that's just one of the stumbling blocks that we face, you know, in bridging that gap between farmers and, you know, those of us who are at a different stage. But another one of the stumbling blocks that I've found as well is that, and a lot of vegans, is when we want to present our case to farmers, we don't have the solution or the relevant farming knowledge. So it's like, stop what you're doing. Okay, well, what do I do? Oh, I don't know, actually. You know, so is there anywhere that you can suggest or that you know of for people where they can go to learn more about helping farmers like Mike to transition so that we can sow some seeds and say, well, actually, did you know that this is going on? Or perhaps you could look at doing this. You know, is there any resources or organizations that you could recommend they look into?
Yeah, definitely. I personally do not have all the answers, but there are other really good organizations that are doing great work in researching how to help farmers transition. So there's an organization called Farm Transformers that we had done an interview with. I talked to them a few years back, and I think they're still working on it and doing some great work. There's the Transformation Project, which is something that's starting up right now, and I think they've got kind of a website going, and they're going to be helping farmers and showing them examples and connecting them maybe with other farmers too. And I think the last one, there might be more, but the last one I can think of now is the Rancher Advocacy Program, which was started up by, I believe it was started by Renee Kingsonen from Rowdy Girl Farm Sanctuary in Texas. So yeah, she's doing great work with that, and I think she's already helped quite a few farmers transition. I don't know if any of them have really done the whole like farm to sanctuary model, just because that is a whole different beast in itself that is very challenging. But transitioning from animal agriculture to plant agriculture is something that is really cool, and I think having the resources out there is so important.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing those, and
definitely.
we'll be sure to try and link those in the description when we do the video. So it's Farmhouse Garden Animal Home is the name of the sanctuary, and it's now well established, which is actually wonderful. We love watching your content when it comes up on Facebook and stuff. But what I'd be interested to know is, what are some of the main issues you face now with running the sanctuary?
Huge issue for us is always fundraising. I mean, when you're there at the sanctuary and you're with the animals, everything is kind of beautiful and amazing, and you love them, and you're like, this is the best place in the world. And then you're like, wait a second, we need to raise $40,000 a year to take care of them. And on top of that, nobody's working there full time, right? Like, I'm a full-time student with another job. Mike has his farm that he's running full time. All of our volunteers have other full-time things happening. So it's challenging, but it's a lot of compassionate people coming together and giving everything that they can to the sanctuary. But it's always a hurdle, right? Because we're always trying to reach those benchmarks and fundraise enough and get those monthly donors and try to reach people through our content and have them connect with the animals. So that's probably our number one struggle always. And of course, there's never a dull moment at the sanctuary itself too, right? Like now we have a pink eye outbreak amongst the cows, poor things, but like they're all being treated, of course, but it's just every day you wake up and it's like something new, right? So there's little things, there's always something to think about. but I mean, it's hugely outweighed by the benefits always.
Oh yeah, like I know with the turnover of sort of volunteers, we visited quite a few sanctuaries out here in New Zealand, and one in particular, you know, they're always having to retrain people because they've got people coming in, they're moving on, and then teaching them what these animals like and watch out for this one. This one's cantankerous. You know, you're constantly sort of retraining and stuff, and I can't imagine all the problems you must have to deal with on a daily basis. But yeah, it's so wonderful to, you know, even when visiting, just see that love and compassion with the animals.
Definitely. And we'll talk about some of your awesome fundraising initiatives in just a tick. But I mean, one of the core focuses of your sanctuary in particular appears to be, well, it is education. And like Gareth said, we've met quite a few sanctuary owners here in New Zealand, and this is always their ultimate goal, what they're aiming towards, to educate, and particularly in educating the younger generation. So can you tell us about the importance of not only caring for the animals, but also educating people about these wonderful animals, their species, and the atrocities that go on with them?
Yeah, well, this was a bit of a learning curve for me too, because when we started off with Sanctuary, my initial goal was like, well, how do I save as many animals as possible? And then you very quickly realize that that's not practical. We don't have the funds, we don't have the space. And so I think every sanctuary owner kind of thinks, well, how do I maximize the number of animals I'm going to help? And it's always through education. And it's through connecting people with the animals at your sanctuary and helping them realize how they are sentient and intelligent, and they're so unique, right? Every animal has a different personality, and it's by having them there physically at the sanctuary and seeing it for themselves that I think sanctuaries make the most difference, not necessarily by like taking animals in. So that's why education has always been one of our main pillars. It's been one of the main focus points of the sanctuary. And I think over the past year, it's been hard now with COVID-19 because we can't have people out, but every event we do, like all of our social media strategy, everything is kind of like, well, how do we connect them to the animals and help them realize how special they really are?
Yeah, one brilliant project that we've loved watching is your humane education classroom. That is absolutely wonderful. Could you share with our viewers a little bit about what it is and how you came about doing it?
Yeah, so we have this beautiful volunteer family. It's Tanya, Mike, Odie, and Tilda. Tanya and Mike are married, and their kids are Odie and Tilda. And they've been volunteering for a while now at the sanctuary. And Tanya's a teacher and is so great with kids and has run a lot of humane education programs at her school. So she thought that she could take this on and do something great with it, and she did. The whole family really pulled together to do something really cool, and we're starting up a summer camp too. So it's really cool to be able to teach children how to be kind and to respect animals. And even though we can't do that in person now, Tanya and Mike and Odie and Tilda did such a fantastic job helping people, especially kids, make that connection online.
Oh, it's been brilliant. Yeah, we've, right through the whole COVID thing, we've been watching you guys, and it's just been brilliant. It's been so great. And especially when this is such a time for people to learn and to have that time to, just make connections, learn new things. And it's such a valuable thing that you guys are doing.
That's great how technology is helping to keep us connected, despite, being distanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've already mentioned, financial support is the key to keeping any sanctuary going. And you and the Farmhouse Garden Animal Home team have come up with some very clever and inventive ways, raising funds during these particularly challenging times. Can you tell our viewers about Buckwheat and her very special role in the corporate sector?
Yeah, Buckwheat's had a bit of a career change recently. Buckwheat's been the source of quite a bit of fame for us recently. She is so special. She's when we had the idea originally of doing these like Zoom meeting crasher, like this fundraiser, we immediately thought of Buckwheat because she loves the human interaction. She loves being with volunteers. We thought, like, which animal would really thrive off of doing this? And I mean, Buckwheat would be around people all day, every day if she could. She gets tons of treats. She'll follow us around. Every time she sees us, she's like, "Hey, you're back. Let's do another one." Like, she always kind of pops up and wants more treats. So it's been really cool to work with her and to show the world how special and unique she really is. And what we've been doing is having her join people's corporate, not only corporate meetings, there've been some birthday parties and some just family gatherings. But yeah, she's been in a lot of really fancy corporate boardrooms too. It's been very interesting. A lot of companies that like we wouldn't expect would want, like a meeting with animals from a sanctuary. But again, on the point of education, it's been a really cool way to reach people who otherwise would never be exposed to animal rights or to sanctuary animals at all. It's kind of our way of like planting those seeds in people's minds, because they're originally sucked in by the idea of like, oh cool, a cute donkey gets to like show up on my Zoom meeting. And then we start talking about our transition to a sanctuary, and then we show them the cows, and we talk a little bit about like sometimes they'll ask if we get milk from the cows, and then we could talk a bit about the dairy industry, right? Like there's these little tidbits of information that we can drop while still keeping it fun and light for people, because that's what they're looking for. But it's been a really great way not just to fundraise but to educate. We've talked to probably like thousands of people with this fundraiser at this point.
That's absolutely fantastic.
So awesome.
Like, yeah, it's just great you having that sort of, almost guerrilla activism in that fact that they're coming for something else, and then it's sort of just like, oh, if you're asking the questions, here you go.
Yeah. We'll have to do a live feed with Buckwheat on Vegan FTA. That would be great. Get her in on it.
She's a pro at this point, yeah.
I bet.
Because actually, it was something for me. I never realized just how loving and sweet donkeys could be. Because for so many years, I always thought of Winnie the Pooh and sort of Eeyore, this sort of depressed donkey. It wasn't until we had to look after a couple of donkeys for a friend that
beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Riley is my best mate now, the donkey in the Kapti Coast, and yeah, I can't wait to go see him again and give him a hug, because they're just such sweet and
they're so sweet. Yeah.
But yeah, it's such an innovative way to fundraise, and I hope that some of our viewers today, who either support sanctuaries or sanctuary owners and operators, can watch this and try and think of ways that they can do their own fundraising. Is there anything else that you've done at the garden farmhouse to really fundraise in another innovative way?
Yeah, we've had to get quite creative now. Before COVID-19, we would just have people out we were pretty creative then too, I think. We had some cool events. We would do our monthly visiting days, but we'd also have events like Moose Talk, where people would come out and like there'd be some activities, you feed the animals, you tie-dye some t-shirts, there's live music. I guess, our big challenge was, how do we still fundraise without people there physically? Because a lot of times people are more inclined to donate when they connect with the animals one-on-one. So we started doing virtual visiting days. We've done 2 of them so far, and they've been really successful, and people can donate a virtual vegetable box. So they'll donate like $5 or $10, and then we'll feed the animals on their behalf live, and their names are called out, and we publicly thank them, and they can see the animal eating the vegetables that they purchased for them. So it's been really cool. We have a few cool events in the works. We're doing a silent auction soon. We're going to be doing a virtual run, so people can help fundraise for us through like a little marathon. Yeah, we're constantly trying to come up with new and creative ways to fundraise, and it's a challenge, but it's also really fun. It's actually also one of my favorite parts. My favorite parts of running the sanctuary is trying to get creative and working with some amazing volunteers on how to put on really great events. So I personally love it. I think it's really challenged us and helped us grow, and it's been really great for the sanctuary.
That is fantastic. It's yeah, I wish we lived closer so we could be part of it all as well.
Oh, well, now virtually you can be part of everything.
Yeah, I want to feed somebody a carrot. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of viewers out there thinking, right, I want to do this. It's such a wonderful, idea, and it's great seeing, I guess, which ideas resonate with people the most and which really work, and what makes
it's always a hit or miss, right? Like, we never know if something's gonna stick, but you just play around with different things and see what people like.
Definitely. And those quirky things like having buckwheat, come and crash your business meeting. It's just absolutely,
And if you would have thought, right? Like, we had no idea it would take off the way it did, but we've sat in like almost, I think, 150 meetings at this point, and we've been in like Maclean's magazine and like all of the, just like a whole host of different news, like media outlets. Yeah, we didn't think that it would take off like this, but buckwheat has spread so much joy into people's lives. It's really cool. We're very thankful.
Oh, bless her. That's awesome. And, we've sort of talked about this, touched on it briefly, but at the sanctuary, the animals do get to live out their full life expectancy, like Mother Nature intended. And for many of our viewers, vegan or non-vegan, they may not understand how long these species are actually naturally capable of living. So all too often, like we've said, the animals that people eat are still in their infancy in comparison to their true life expectancy. We've mentioned about the cows and calves and the age that they're normally sent to slaughter, which is, basically, you're looking at toddlers really, aren't you? Which is just hideous. But, you've mentioned that you have chickens at the farm that are 25 years old, and compared to the chickens that we normally see people eat, which are 6 weeks old. It's absolutely insane. How great is it to see the animals reach their old age and become even more endearing or cantankerous as it may be?
It's beautiful. It's so fulfilling, and it really like solidifies our commitment to animal rights and wanting to help more animals. And I mentioned Martha, one of our old cows, who's now, she's getting really old. She's having trouble walking. She needs like pain medication. She has arthritis. And I think on one hand that it's difficult to make sure that all of her needs are met. And we're always trying to make life as comfortable as possible for her. But it's also so beautiful. Like, where else are you going to see an animal just growing old and being taken care of, in her golden years? So, yeah, we love her so much. She's so sweet, and we're really thankful that we've had such a long period of time to enjoy with her.
Yeah, it's one thing a lot of us see, with our cats and dogs, as they get old, like their personalities grow even further, and it's just so wonderful to see them fully live out that life.
Yeah,
and
she's like everyone's grandma now, right? She's so so cute.
Well, we're gonna finish on a it might be quite a controversial question. It might be a bit of a hard nut to crack, but it's something that comes up more too often in vegan groups lately, especially with some of the stuff that's coming out recently about, farmers abusing their animals and such. And it's the case that everyone says that, farmers don't love their animals. And it's a hard one, because knowing a bit more about the inside, as we've touched on earlier, that quite often there is that ethics, and it's just that the actions are so warped and misaligned with that ethics because of all these years of being indoctrinated. Do you feel, having seen Mike from start to sort of finish, do you believe that he loved his animals, before helped to create the sanctuary?
Yeah, I think it's really hard for us as vegans to wrap our head around how that kind of love could even be possible. But he truly believed and believes now still that he did love the animals even then. And the way that he described it was that there is love towards them, but you just know what has to be done at the end, and you turn off a switch in your brain and you just get the job done. And he says that many farmers, including him, don't like it. It's not something that's pleasant for them, but somehow it doesn't detract from the love that they feel for the animals. And yeah, I've heard, I mean, at the farmers market, we have other vendors that sell meat, and I've heard one of them saying, oh, like, we treat our animals like royalty. We love them all. And to us, we're thinking like royalty, like you literally send them to die. But again, it's about meeting people where they're at, right? And realizing how they were raised and what kind of worldview they're immersed in. And to them, it's just part of life and what has to be done. And of course, that's not true. It doesn't have to be done. But yeah, I do think I don't know if it's love or if it's not love, but I do think they believe that they care for the animals. Not all of them, of course. There are many farms where the animals are abused horrifically. But I think, and Mike will say this, Mike very strongly believes that many of the farmers that he knows and has grown up around truly deeply care about the animals, and they just, again, turn off that switch in their brains. That's all it is.
Yeah. We when we're talking to Dr. Clapper for one of the previous episodes, he puts in the form of, we're all sleeping that sleep, and some of us just haven't woken up yet. And I like the analogy of it's sort of like a fire, and you've got those embers there, which are the compassion and the love. It's just that with farming, it's like putting blankets on it, you're smothering it, and it might still be there, that ember. It's just conditioning, and just the whole practice of it is just is keeping it down. But once you lift off those covers, with Mike, that fire is there, and we can all really see it. And I can't thank you enough for coming here and explain a bit about the sanctuary and your journey. And Mike and I can't wait to hopefully, one day have a meeting with Buckwheat myself.
Yeah, and please give Mike a hug for doing what he's doing. It's so wonderful. Like you say, we get so indoctrinated into thinking that, oh, it's a shame, but this is how it's got to be. He's proof that, you guys are proof that it doesn't have to be that way at all.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you would like to support our speaker, then follow the links provided in the description. If you're enjoying this content, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like on some of our videos and drop some comments with the things that you've been learning from this series. We really appreciate all your love and support, and we can't wait to bring you the next episode. Thank you.